A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Meaning of Life. Looking at the film industry, we realize that some science fiction movies from years ago were astonishingly close to today's reality. The neuroscientist Josua Kohberg gives us another example from the field of ultrasound technology. Stay tuned. Hello Joshua, welcome.
Hello Rolf, thank you very much.
Neos X, that sounds kind of like a name in a science fiction movie. What is this about?
It's actually the result of my research work that I started in 1997. And the idea behind this whole research project was whether humans are actually able to hear in other ways than just with the ears. That's when I started researching, and what we know today as Neos X as a product started back then, 1997.
Progress now over 20 years, steadily progressing. What was the approach or your original motivation to get into the topic at all?
That was actually a personal pain. It was very interesting. I met Vera F. Birkenby in 1995, 2 years earlier. Maybe she is known to some people other. Unfortunately, she never achieved the level of fame that she should have achieved. A brilliant woman, her main role was actually a management trainer. That's how I met her, at a seminar for managers. But she was always somehow involved in brain research. Well, back then I wasn't even a neuroscientist, I only went to study it then, because she kind of spurred me onto it a little bit. And when I got to know her, she also had language courses, among other things, with which you should learn to speak a language quite well in a few months or in a year. So really using it, acquiring a language was always her context. And after I was a classic English failure at school, the topic somehow hit me, 1995.
That was your motivation in a way and the vision. What kind of technology did you use then?
I met her in person for the first time in 1997, not in the context of a seminar or anything like that. At that time she lived near Munich and I visited her there. And then we exchanged ideas about what I actually wanted. And then she just explained to me her way of learning languages and just said, if I really want to learn a language, then I have to hear it first. That was then also revealed to me. I never really thought it through before, because I knew how to learn languages from school in the traditional way. You sit there, you get a few rules explained to you and you're supposed to memorize words. And then you learn and eventually speak English. And she said, that's a way that isn't brain-friendly at all. Brain-friendly would be like a baby being born to just listen, and still listen to the language and then at some point to start using the language out of context because I understand references. And then I thought, okay, I'll try that. And then I just completed one of her language courses, really. I have always been very interested in making something measurable. Hence my degree in neuroscience. Of course I wanted to know, does it really work? Then I just did an introductory test at another institute, but then I didn't study with their documents, but used the Birkenby documents as it were. And then, after 9 months, I was actually at the college graduation level. That's when I thought to myself, it's really phenomenal what she's done there. That came from before, the knowledge. I think Heinrich Schliemann, as early as 1840, published language courses in this way. And then she just said to me that the big problem would be that people learn with her method, but they would not listen passively. And I have to admit, I didn't do it enough either, because her approach back then was having a tape recorder. Back then there were still cassettes, always playing quietly in the background when sitting in the office. Then I thought, there must be another way. I was very tech savvy. I programmed websites back in 1991. I love machines, computers as much as people. I'm interested in both things. And she noticed that relatively quickly. Then she said, if you are so technically oriented, Mr. Kohberg, then develop something so that you can hear without using your ears. And she actually meant it more in a funny way, she told me afterwards. But I couldn't let go of the idea. It was science fiction. So I thought, okay, I have to go somehow. Then I had a client who was a patent attorney, and I called him. And then he said, well, we have to do some global research. And then, unbelievably, 800 patents came to light, from different countries, where any companies, any people, had patented something in order to use an alternative hearing path. And it was actually unbelievable for me that there were already so many approaches back then.
And what was the technology that you finally chose? Or how did you go about it? How did you research there?
I then proceeded by simply looking at what types of methods had already been patented. Then I looked, what could I use? What would be feasible in my technical capabilities? And then I took 3 things. And the oldest patent was from, I think, 1963, US Army Dolphin Research Project. They tried it back then, by the way, it's happening again in the Crimea now. They tried to train dolphins, so to speak, with a communication set, that you can tell the dolphin where to swim and so on. And this concept didn't really work at the time, but it resulted in a patent because they found out when I swim next to a dolphin as a human, the dolphin is underwater, makes clicking noises. So a dolphin also communicates in the range that is audible to humans, but also up to the ultrasonic range. And they found out when the dolphin swims next to the trainer, underwater, if it makes a clicking noise, the trainer hears it, even though the trainer's head is above water. And they patented it. And the interesting thing is, with this patent from 1963, there was an ENT professor who came up with the idea that was Professor Lenhardt, one of the forefathers of cochlear implants, and he was looking for a way to stimulate the auditory nerve. And then he took the patent again and combined it with his own new patent in 1991. And so I came across this chain and I thought, okay, if I can stimulate the auditory nerve with ultrasound, then I don't have to connect the auditory nerve via an electric wire, which Lenhardt did, but with the dolphin I also have no electrical line. Then it must somehow go through contact vibration. That was my research approach. Then it took me 2 years until I had a prototype that worked. That's how it developed to today's Neos X. This is now the 10th development stage of this patent, which I built up at the time.
Were there also previous models?
I developed a total of 10 different stages of development. We actually started selling the first device in order to somehow refinance it. It was very sluggish, of course. It was like that, you have to imagine, I came onto the market with it in 2000. So nobody knew us. I was a product-loving scientist who also had no idea about business or marketing or anything. It was actually a really bad time in my life. But this vision was so big that it naturally carried me. And then the first thing I did was see a lot of doctors because we had results for tinnitus, burnout, and so on. And then there was a network of doctors, and I have lost a bit of this language issue out of focus because of course the device, there wasn't even an MP3 format. So in 2000 we had a CD player plus the technology. So that was like a suitcase. Today you simply wear it on your wrist like a smart watch. It's a different world, of course. But it was just enough for a start. And so I kind of worked my way from one generation to the next. At some point we also built up an engineering team, so hardware developers, software developers. And today I'm actually no longer active in development. I'm actually just saying what the product should look like. I'm not as active in the company as I used to be, but rather put the brainstorming into it, and I actually dedicate myself more to the product ideas and the extensions.
So from technician and developer to product designer.
Basically, yes.
But of course you needed the previous experience to know all that and to go through these different stages. And today you know exactly where you want to go.
And it wouldn't have been financially viable back then either. If I hadn't been able to develop it myself, the original generations, so to speak, I couldn't have paid for that because I didn't have the cash flow. And today too. We are still a small self-financed family business. We are 14 people and the company is owned by my wife and I. So we're not on a grand scale. So still a small family business.
And that was based on ultrasound right from the start.
Exactly.
What actually is ultrasound, or the essence of ultrasound?
That's quite an intriguing question because ultrasound is actually an area which begins just above the audible range of humans. We are already talking about ultrasound at around 20,000 Hz. But that goes into ranges up to 2.4, 2.5 million Hz. This is also not something that necessarily occurs in nature. For me it was like this: before I studied neuroscience, I also did bionics. So I was always interested in the question, what can you learn from nature? Bionics really just means I look at a bird, for example, and use it to develop a wing for an airplane. And I also chose this approach for the neos. That's why we only use frequencies that occur naturally in audible airborne noise, for example. Not even in the water sound. So if I say now, for example, a dolphin goes up to 250,000, 280,000 Hz, there are whales up to 400,000 Hz, we don't use that because we're not in the water with the neos, but I have a vibration on the skin. And that's why we stop where insects, bats, and so on stop in communication, because a bionician's assumption is if it occurs in nature, it has no harmful side effects. And that actually speaks for itself. It is actually the case, that is, when we talk about ultrasound, we have actually a very low frequency compared to, for example, a ship's sonar or something, but do not have any disruptive factors, but actually only beneficial factors for the body. So this ultrasonic technology goes purely via vibration, brings the skin and the cells, actually then at the end all cells in the body, to a resonating vibration, and thus has a very beneficial influence. Relaxation, cerebral hemisphere synchronization, electrical compensation, and so on.
That is the effect of ultrasound in the body. And you take advantage of this with the products.
Exactly.
What role does the strength play, the field strength, or how do you say, can it also be harmful because of the intensity?
In the ultrasonic range one speaks of sound pressure. In higher ranges, now for example with a sonar, one would be able to talk about field strength again, but with us we're talking about sound pressure. And we actually work with a very minimal sound pressure level, which could actually be illustrated like a very fine, soft massage. That means I don't feel it as a user at all. I can hear it though. I'm wearing the neos here on my wrist now. I can run a Spanish class there, but I have no conscious awareness when we're both talking now. But if, for example, I went to the toilet and closed the door and it was completely quiet in the room, then I would easily perceive Spanish dialogues, for example. Or if I'm working with frequencies, I might perceive an audible frequency. But it's actually so minimalistic that I don't even notice it in everyday life. But the auditory nerve is processing this information and the brain is processing as we both speak now, this audio information that I use about the neos.
To make it clear, if you say when it's quiet, you'll hear these, for example, Spanish dialogues. That's in the audible range. What role does ultrasound play here? Is that the carrier?
Yes, exactly. You can call it that. We have a carrier frequency with the ultrasound and we then modulate the audible signal onto it. This means that when we speak, we normally speak via audible frequencies, but these are transported to the skin via ultrasonic modulation. And the skin decouples that. That's the exciting thing about it.
I could actually work on two tracks. On the one hand in the audible range and at the same time via the modulation on the ultrasound. And that via the body cells. Is it then possible to perceive via the cells?
Exactly. Basically, it really oscillates through the cell, but it resonates through the auditory nerve. If you look at it from a neuroscientific point of view, this is actually very interesting from the point of view of the process. If an egg cell is now fertilized by a sperm cell, Then we have the beginning of a cell division, so 4 cells, 8 cells, 16 cells. And in the first few days there is actually only, now value-free, if I put it that way, but actually only a lump of skin. This means that the demarcation towards the outside is beginning to take shape. And the interesting thing about it is that the skin is connected to all organs. The skin is really a sensory organ. We also know that today. That's why we have a connection to the optic nerve, to the auditory nerve. There is a very interesting study, for example, with blind people who were trained that they can distinguish the light of a colored lamp through their skin. So you have green light, yellow light, red light. And after a certain training period, they can then say that this is the red light. For someone who has never experienced it, or for us now that we see it, it's illogical and doesn't make any sense either. But in fact the skin is able to address the optic nerve, the auditory nerve and so on. And not just touch and warmth, etc.
And do you work with different frequencies, or does every device, or every type of device, or for the purpose you are working for, have a specific carrier frequency?
In principle, I have been researching continuously since 1997. And I think in 2007, 2008 that was another result, that you can use different carrier frequencies to stimulate organs. So regardless of what I want to hear now, if I do Spanish training now, whether I hear a frequency for a therapy or a mental training, I have different frequencies and stimulate, for example, the heart or the brain. And in terms of bioresonance, this is now more of an alternative medical field, but the interesting thing is that one organ is always dominant. For example, if I drive a car, concentrate outwards, am focused, have to pay attention, then our brain has the dominance, because we have to concentrate on observing external influences. I'll take another example now. I'm sitting on the sofa at home, having a relaxing evening and reading a nice book, where I immerse myself in an exciting story. I am also concentrated, but the dominance has my heart, because the body is relaxed. That means the muscle tone is lower, so things like that. And we can specifically stimulate that with the neos. This is used in therapy, for example, to bring burnout candidates down, for example, bringing tension back into people who are depressed, lethargic, and so on.
And the frequency plays a role here?
Yes, exactly.
So each organ, in this example, has a different frequency on which it then triggers or is responsive and wins dominance.
Exactly, yes. And we focus on 3 main organs. But that also has something to do with it, because we always transmit information at neos. This is a research paper that emerged from my contact with Dr. Childer. It's such a topic. We now know that we not only have the brain that processes information, we also have brain intelligence. This is the conscious level, the perception processing. But we also have heart intelligence and gut intelligence. And that's why we have these 3 intelligences in neos, which we can then also combine, for example. So this is a very exciting topic. For example, if I say I learn a language and I learn a language purely cognitively, then it is never as strong as when I connect the language with the heart and with gut intelligence. For your understanding, when I say today that I speak fluent German or fluent English, then I understand nuances between the words. For example, a joke with black humor. If I just speak the language alone, I may not get the joke. Or these nuances, when someone wants to tell me diplomatically that they are actually annoyed by me, then they express it in nuances. That is more heart or gut intelligence. And that makes a language really round, for example.
How do I get that in when I'm learning a language, this intermediate intelligence?
That work by hearing the language 8 to 9 hours a day through the skin and taking in the speech melody. Because the core of the language is first of all the melody. It's not the words, it's not the grammar rule, it's just melodies. That is, we pay attention to the melody of the language. And if I do this for 400, 500, 600 hours in 3 months, then I can speak the language at a very safe level after 3 months as if I were at the graduation level. but with the nuances. That's the subtle difference.
So, I get the nuances right away and I would then understand the joke.
Exactly, and I'm simply more practical in the implementation, much faster in the implementation.
And can a NEOS device have different frequencies, or do I need a different device for each frequency, for each purpose, for each target? Or can this be set on the device?
You can set that on the device. You then have 5 different frequencies and you choose, for example, when I drive home today, here after the recording, then I would take the brain rate, for example, because I now have a relatively long drive ahead of me. If I were to sit in the office now and produce something creative, maybe write a text or something, then I would rather take the heart frequency. If I have to do something with taxes, I would use brain again, because that's where I have to concentrate because I don't like doing that, as an example.
What other areas of application do I have there? It seems to me that there is still great potential due to the short course of development and your research. What else do you have in mind? What else is in store for us?
A lot. In fact, many areas are currently not implemented for financial reasons because we are developing organically. I don't want to give the technology to a large corporation where I then ultimately no longer know what is happening with it in the background. That's why we go step by step. This is exactly the right way for us too. We do this as a family. Our employees are a small, fine team. That's why there will simply be several steps in the next few years. But we already cover the most important topics from my current perspective. We cover learning. For example, learning languages is one of our main topics because it interests a lot of people. Many have traumatic experiences, think they are untalented, they can't do it. When they learn with our system, after 2 or 3 months they are simply happy, because they can speak a language they believe they never could. This is a topic, for example. Then, of course, we are also active in the university sector. Students of all stripes use the NEOS to speed up their studies. Then we have a therapeutic area, which I don't look after myself. We are not doctors, my wife and I. We have a network of 2 universities and almost 800 or almost 900 doctors. It ranges from pain therapy to the support of treating seriously ill people. The third part is personality development. This is also a favorite topic of Simone and I. Simone has been researching the analysis of the human voice for many years. She looks at and optimizes a system where you can derive a character image from a person's voice. As a result, you can do individual coaching on this character picture again with the NEOS. It's a very intelligent, interlocking concept. For someone who is new, it is sometimes unbelievable what we are doing. That's why I found the title you suggested so interesting with science fiction. In fact, whenever we talk about something, what could be in the future but is not yet, it is science fiction. It's not that dramatic. Any company that submits a business plan ends up writing a science fiction plan. It was the same with the products we developed. Also the apps. We developed apps. It was all science fiction and eventually it's real.
I just wanted to follow up. On the one hand, we have the technology based on ultrasound. You just mentioned the apps. You probably always need a counterpart in the form of apps, which is probably where the added value comes from, or the application, the interface for the benefit that they can use the same unintentionally, necessary.
Exactly. Basically, it's an approach with the apps that we have. For example, we have an app where you can analyze your voice, as an example. But on the other hand, every user can also use the NEOS completely individually, because you can use any audio file. If I have something as an MP3 or WAF file, I can use it via the NEOS. For example, we have customers who are training to become naturopaths. Then we have customers who are tax consultants and are doing their tax training. The only requirement is actually only if I want to learn something passively, unconsciously. I need it as an audio file. That's the only thing. When I graduated in neuroscience, I had no audio files. The course is very small. 40 or 50 people study it in Germany every year. This is a real fringe group issue. That's why I spoke my audio files to myself for learning. Then I take my smartphone and make an MP3 file and play that on the Neos to anchor it subconsciously.
That's interesting. You can probably also take larger amounts of information, especially at the university, for example large amounts of information out of lectures. If you get that into an audio file, it can be learned afterwards as if in offline mode. I can do something else and get the material that way. That seems to me to be a huge area of application. Super interesting.
Many customers always say it sounds almost too good to be true. In fact, we experience this all the time. I always give the example of driving a car. In the beginning, a very conscious process. I have to think about how to shift gears, how to brake, how to use the clutch. If I do this for 3 years, I will drive the car completely unconsciously. All we can do today in a high perfection is an unconscious competence. The Neos is just the opportunity to get into an unconscious competence much faster. This is also used by many athletes, professional golfers, soccer players, handball players, bobsledders. I can easily speed up anything I want to learn 3, 4, 5 times via the Neos and bring it into unconscious competence. Therefore, anyone who has more money than time is interesting for us as a client. As soon as I can save time, it makes sense.
Probably also more sustainable because it is fed in via the subconscious and the cells.
Exactly.
How can you get more information about it?
Best actually on the company website, on kosys.de. I'm not that active myself anymore nowadays. I became more withdrawn. But actually these products are there. Simply KOSYS, that means Kohberg Systems. That's still my stamp, of course. But the fact is that we have a very wide range of methods there for therapy, for coaching, for learning languages. You can watch videos and get information independently if that appeals to you.
Nice. Thank you, Josua, for this information.
Gladly.
Dear viewers, science fiction is when something doesn't exist yet, but an idea is floating around, maybe in the form of a film, a visualization. Well, if I may get to the point, the whole of life is sci-fi. The development is progressing. New things keep coming towards us. With that in mind, thank you for your interest in this topic, and I hope you will visit us again soon. See you soon. I wish you all the best.